So I want to congratulate Trustee Little and Trustee Merrill. We're very fortunate to have you two back with us for the next 4 years. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Mr.
Secondly, I'd like to congratulate our newest trustee, and Trustee Thompson. She will be with us at our next meeting. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, may I make a comment?
Yes.
I have to have a disclaimer here.
Hold on.
That's true.
This is Thompson Janine. Happens to be a pseudo nepotism thing for me. She is actually.
Sound right.
I feel like I should go outside for a minute.
Yeah, let's
Talk to your
So anyway, she and my oldest daughter have been the closest of friends since 7th grade. They've done everything in life that you can think of, and we won't ask what those things are. But she's like a sixth daughter to me.
Oh, wow.
And so I would like to disclose that I have a fondness toward this lady.
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask Trustee Erickson a question. So I have 2 daughters, and the one thing I've learned is they disagree with everything I say. Can we expect the same type of behavior of your pseudo daughter?
Yes.
Anyway, it's really delightful to have Jenny as an upcoming trustee.
I agree. I think this institution is definitely fortunate to have all 3 of you back and new. So next order of business, we have a new ex officio, student ex officio, and I'll let Derek introduce.
So this is Austin Babcock. He is a senator for our School of Arts and Humanities, I believe. And he will be your new ex officio as he was reviewed by our selection committee. I don't really have too much more to say about him. He's been a rather vocal member of our Senate, and we got a lot of vocal members, which is kind of a fun thing, kind of a pain a long time. But yeah, it's funny to tell you. It's
Great.
talking for a while.
Welcome. Welcome.
Yes, welcome.
Are you a theater major?
No.
Psychology?
Mr. Chairman, can our new trustee tell us a little more about him?
Yes, I have a question. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name's Austin. I lived in Wyoming about, I think, 5-6 years now. I am really interested in psychology. It's my major in it. I'm also really interested in arts, music, photography, lots of things, but I just kind of keep those as hobbies. I'm trying to become more involved with politics around Cheyenne. I attended a couple of the forum meetings and interviewed some of the candidates. And I just want to try to do what I can to make Cheyenne and Milltops a better place. Thank you, guys.
Austin, where are you from?
Thank you.
Where are you from, Austin?
Okay. So I was born in Angelic Air Force Base, Turkey. I lived there for 2 or 3 years while I was 10, 11. I also lived in Japan, Okinawa, in Air Force Base for about 5 years, and then I moved here, and I've lived here since I was about 13, 14, I think. So yeah, it's kind of hard to say, but I guess I'm from here now.
All right. Well, it's good to have you. And Derek, thank you for your work with us over the past, 2 years now, huh?
Yes, thank you.
So, yeah. Thank you. We look forward to working with you as well, Austin. All right, on to business. We have some minutes to approve. Can I have a motion?
I move to approve the minutes from last week.
Second that motion.
We have 2 sets of meetings.
That's 2 sets of meetings, yeah. September meeting and.
Did
The
we forget
October
to-
3rd.
Did we forget to approve them?
I don't think we did.
We didn't have them. Right?
No, okay. I move to approve both sets from both meetings.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded by Trustee Merrill. Any more discussion on the minutes? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Now on to reports to the board. We do not have a staff senate report tonight, but we have a faculty report and we have Connie Zarnecki.
Yes.
Got it, yeah.
All right. It's good to have you here,
Mr.
Connie.
Chairman, good evening, honorable trustees. Thank you for having me. I'm here for Nate Koosman, our president for Faculty Senate tonight. I am the director of the Surgical Technologies Program and proud of it at this moment. We're having visitors from Casper tomorrow, so that'll be fun. So thank you. Thank you. I wanted to take a minute to say thank you, Mr. Chairman, for all you've done for us. And I'm sorry to see you leaving, but congratulations to the girl power. Am I allowed to say that? I think it's wonderful, and I really would like all of you to know how much we appreciate it as faculty to have such a wonderful, administration and board to work with. We all really appreciate the time you give to our community, sometimes thanklessly, and I understand that, but we do appreciate it. So, on that note, Faculty Senate's been pretty active. We have we started with Staff Senate a book club, Redesigning America's Community Colleges book. It's a collaboration, Staff Senate and Faculty Senate, and it's occurring throughout campus. The goal for us is to have this completed in the spring, to have everybody read the book, and it aligns itself with our Pathways project. So we're trying to promote what we can and get everybody involved. Faculty Senate is going to be reviewing and implementing new processes for faculty awards and continuous improvement through Faculty Senate. We have a really, really wonderful, cohesive group in Faculty and Staff Senate at this point. So we're enjoying it. Subcommittees for those two goals will be beginning probably within the next few weeks. Keep us busy. We had a get-together of Faculty and Staff Senate at Accomplice Brewery. Just a little get-together to get to know each other, and the turnout was pretty good, and we're going to continue trying to do that to promote camaraderie between the two senates and everybody on campus. And then they told me I can add anything I want that's appropriate. So I think appropriate is congratulations on the mill levy.
Yay!
We're all pretty happy about it, and I'm looking forward to the auditorium so that I can go to some concerts here on campus and see what's going on. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it, and again, thank you for everything you do.
Thank you, Connie.
Thanks, Connie. All right. Vice President Johnson, do you have any additional construction update for us? Or are we up?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thought maybe it might be wise for some that didn't make the tour. So the library project hit a snag today. We learned of it in a significant way where we've got a fire code challenge to meet with a wall, which is going to delay the project 2 weeks, something like that is what they're estimating. They're continuing to work evenings and weekends and trying to keep the schedule moving, but this is a pretty significant setback because we have to undo some of the work that's been done to get this wall upgraded. So other than that, library looks good. Joe, do you want me to touch on fine arts now?
Sure.
Okay. What a wonderful day for El Purple City. So we're working fast. I've actually been working on the fine arts the last month, anticipating that if we got the positive results, then we'd be ahead of the game. But so here's how it kind of lays out at the moment. Just reminding you, it's a $14 million project, 7 from the state, 7 from us. We see this now happening in a phased way, not slightly phased. The renovation portion we would like to begin mid-May, just as soon as we get past commencement. The auditorium piece, the additional building, we would start in July. So the renovation would run from mid-May through June of 2020. And the auditorium piece would run from this coming July through December of 2020. So both wrapping up there by the time we get to the end of 2020. The state will be running this project, so it's very much like the Flex Tech and Pathfinder projects. We'll be working closely with them, but they take a more lead role. That's not the case with the Res Hall by comparison. So I've been in touch with them. I actually had a meeting with them a couple weeks ago, now reaching out again to get the gears turning. It's imperative that we get a contractor on board to work with the architect. We've decided that we will do this as a construction manager at risk delivery method, which is CMAR. It's what we've been doing many of these with. Semple Brown, you may recall, is the architect of record so far on this. We intend to continue to use them and leverage all the work that's been done rather than kind of starting from scratch with somebody else. The state has to engage Semple Brown. I can't do it in this case. So really my efforts there are trying to get the State Construction Management Division lined up to begin executing all the pieces. Because we do need to get going, because we have a design development phase that needs to complete by February, and then we need to move into construction documents, and then be able to bid out the sub-packages so we can launch in mid-May. So it seems like it's a ways out, but every single day between now and then is precious. So the other piece that we have to figure out, and we've developed a plan, is the bridge financing. What I mean by that is we're getting our mill levy revenues, but they don't start rolling in until September 2019. I've been working with the assessor and county treasurer to really kind of pinpoint how this is going to work. But we've got to start generating, work now, so we have costs. And then, of course, the mill levy revenues run quite a bit longer after construction's done. So we've got this.
Rick, can you tell me again, what was that date? When do we start getting the levy revenues?
Well, we'll start seeing the flows to us in
Yeah.
September of
Okay.
2019.
Okay, thank you.
So we need to get some financing in place to cover us in this early window. And then later, as time goes by, the revenues cover the financing. So where our thinking at the moment is that we want to put an RFP on the street and put it out to everybody, credit unions, banks, you name it, and lay out our picture and seek some creative financing solutions to this. There's great flows later, there's costs early, and someone that might be interested in this opportunity has a pretty good guarantee of the return, and maybe we could get something really creative. So that's something I need to get on the street quickly. So that's happening. The other piece is we have meetings scheduled with stakeholders here on campus to begin thinking about what we call the swing plan, which would be where we put people in classes and classrooms and all this stuff that's going to be disrupted in there. And so that's underway. November 19th, we'll be having a pretty significant meeting to bring everybody's thinking together and craft a plan. The reason this has to happen now is because we've got court schedules and whatnot that get produced mid-winter, early spring, and so all this has to be figured out before we get to that point. So there's a lot of work that we're gladly taking on now to get this rolling. So happy to answer any questions on that.
Questions?
The ACC classroom project is out on the street. We'll be receiving our construction bids at the end of the month, November 28th. So we'll see where we stand there. Crossroads is all but done, still waiting on a piece of furniture. Res Hall is, I've been saying to people, Res Hall's like a freight train going downhill. It's just picking up speed and staying on the track, so.
Mr. Chair, given the fact that our last meeting was prior to the SLIP meeting, I wonder for the record, if we could have an update from the SLIP approval and activities that you've been doing up to this date. Do we have that? Because I would like to see it in the record.
Certainly. We got our SLIP approval October 4th, and then began working down the path of establishing a closing date. We got all our title work complete. That's ready to go. And we were going to close on October 30th. The folks at the SLIP office got in touch with us. They actually came out and met with us and said that we would need to delay the closing a bit. And the reason stated was that there was some work that needed to be done with regard to what's called the safekeeping agreement. It's a contract between us and Wyoming Bank and Trust. And they actually wanted to be a three-way agreement, not just a two-way agreement. And there were some other issues that they wanted to get worked out. So they asked us just to hold off and idle while they went to work on that piece. So at this moment, Don, I was on the phone with them this morning. I had to do with Fine Arts, but they didn't have an update for me today. And so we're just kind of waiting for them to tell us what next steps are going to be. The logical next step is we get all the attorneys around the table and work out the details on this agreement and then schedule a closing and go. So it's our hope maybe we get that pulled off before we get to the end of November. That's what I do.
Mr. Chair. Trustee Erickson, I can provide an update on that. This week I did meet with the Attorney General's office on the agreement, and we walked through areas of the of their concerns. I have confidence that they will be able to provide us an updated draft within the coming weeks. There's one particular area of concern that may require additional time for them to feel comfortable with regarding just the safekeeping of it and how that associates with different securities and the rules associated with that. But they have, we are working towards that and making sure the agreement is sufficient for all parties. So that did happen this week.
Thanks.
But, Mr. Chair, what is so exciting for me is the movement that we have been able to move forward since last fall, when we had an election that we were unable to pass, and we found other ways to achieve two of those projects. Now there is a third project, and I know that Trustee Ketchum and Trustee Salazar and Trustee Erickson will be pushing on working toward the completion of the rack renovation.
Good. I look forward to that.
From a distance.
From a distance, yeah.
Any other questions? All right, thanks. Vice President Hay, Pathways update.
Good evening. We have been working hard with the Pathways program, and all the teams are working on their deadlines. They've kind of now become very aware that there are some deadlines and milestones that are coming right up. So they're pretty serious with their work. One of them is that we established as an early milestone that we all need, and other teams are waiting for some of their work, is the Eagles Academies group. And so they've been doing some open forums with the faculty and deans of each school, the current schools, and have come down to 7 academies that they are agreed on, and the faculty are pretty much there. There are a few faculty who are talking about you know, does this one program or that one program belong in a different academy, and how would that work? But that's sort of what we've heard from other schools, is everybody will agree about like 80% of them, and then we'll have 20 that you talked about, 20% that you talked about. And that is what we're doing, but I think as of this week, they have agreed that there's a logical grouping of those programs, and so it's not that anybody is really in dispute about. And so we're moving on to when we name them and some of the other details there. So in January, they should be pretty much ready to show that to whomever, and that's when their first deadline is for that. Another couple of teams have found that they have some overlap, and we're finding that with several of the teams, that some of their work is touching other people's, other teams' work. And so what we've heard from other schools that have completed their pathways or are in it is, don't wait to do that collaboration, do it now. Working in silos and just getting your stuff done will not pay you back in the future. So we are really encouraging those teams to keep working together. So an example is advising and the entry process folks, the advising model and a streamlined entry process have really kind of found that their work overlaps quite a bit, and they need to be working on that early advising and late admissions kind of area for students. So that's exciting. Wrapped into that is the technology solution that we have been, that's part of the must-have for the advising model. And they've been looking at two main leaders in that space in the industry, and that is Civitas with their solution, and then EAB, which has the Navigate solution. So we have invited them to campus. We had a very structured visit from them, and then and are kind of working on that proposal from those teams. And then Chad Marley went to a conference and found another vendor in this space. And so today we had a short demo and talk with that vendor, and we have a couple of questions for them to see if they really can compete. They're not quite equal to the other two that we entertained, but we wanted to explore that and see what their pricing is about, because they're expensive solutions. But, so I feel very good about the team that has put that together. They have a very formal document. I don't know if any of you have seen what I think they presented to the F&F committee today maybe. But they have a very structured list of requirements that we asked them for, and how each of the vendors met those requirements, and then the pricing is one of those areas. So that's exciting, and that should come forward hopefully soon. Another thing that's just happening, and this is probably project management type of thing, is the propensity for other things to start to cloud into it and come into one of the must-haves, and the charter teams think, oh, we've got to redesign, for instance, the Coles 1000 class. And so that's part of Clark's and my job to say, no, that's not on your must-have list. That is a job that needs to be done, but don't slow your work down to get that one done, because we'll have another team do it. So in some cases, Clark and I are finding other teams to do the work, or saying, we're going to put this off until we're done with pathways, and then this will be next on the list. So a lot of exciting work to be done, and it's really rewarding to see the teams work with this. We're trying to do this as a formal project management type of a design, and that's hard for some people around campus, because it's not the way higher ed usually works. And so, we are in a time when we have some deadlines, and we're trying to stick with them, and if we don't, then everything starts to fall apart. And some people around campus that are weighing in and trying to participate in the forums are saying, time out, why are you going so fast? And so again, Clark and I need to be there to say, because everything depends on this. And so we're going to keep moving, but you are heard. We will be putting together kind of an FAQ type of a notion. We haven't figured it out yet, but for people who have questions about pathways in general that they think might stop the work in their group, and that might be their hope, but it's not gonna stop the work in the group, but we will get those answers, and so that's exciting, and, you keep plowing through, so that's where we are.
Mr. Chair,
Any
can
questions?
you talk a little bit about the communication plan that's also going on?
Yes. Thank you. We have a new kind of a public SharePoint site that the Josh Stein and Kelly Humphrey are the co-chairs of that group. And so monthly, they're making sure that there's new content out there, and they are trying to keep their eye on all of the 9 groups and what they're doing so that they can help communicate out to the campus community what they're doing and when the next kinds of opportunities might be. So in that site, it's got a big P with all the colored dots on it. Have you seen that in your email? And you can go to that site and see either the general information and a video of some things, or you can go to each of the must-haves. They have a site too, so a few of them are more well-developed than others. It just happens to be where they are in their work. So Gen Ed has a lot of good information out there, and that's kind of a fun thing for the team leaders to do, but it's also a good way for the campus community to stay informed. So, thanks for being here.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. Before we get to Dr. Schaefer's report, I did want to, we have a new face in the crowd tonight, and this is Katie Cole with the Wyoming Tribune Eagle. So,
Hi, Katie.
thanks for joining us tonight. Dr. Schaefer. You're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Good evening. I wanted to start off with an election recap, and my recap is it turned out quite favorably for LCCC. I'm going to ask Associate Vice President Trimble to do the more detailed recap, and really more as an opportunity to publicly recognize the leadership and the good work that she really did in this campaign through the foundation. We had a strong committee, and I know there were folks involved, but I can tell you that I don't know that she slept much over the past few months, and in many ways, the success of the campaign is a result of the efforts that Lisa put in directly to the campaign, and so I think we owe her a big debt of gratitude for the efforts that she put forward. She's, of course, been working with West Edge Collective, who helped us with a lot of the work, and they're moving sort of into a debrief of what worked well. I think, in hindsight, and of course the outcome is easy for me to say this, but we took a non-traditional approach with this campaign and really tried to hit audiences that we didn't quite reach in previous ways. And there were some traditional aspects of it as well, but really reached out and engaged. And I was continuously surprised as I would go out, even such as yesterday at the chamber lunch, and hearing from people that were in our target demographic that I've had no direct contact with, and we haven't had any formal, public impersonal contact, that were well aware of the initiative. And so I have to think that our efforts through social media, through electronic information sharing, and really through the grassroots effort seemed to reach out, and people were far more informed, it seemed, than they were last year. And so, the campaign was a success. Certainly the outcome was a success. But Lisa, I don't know if you want to share, some of the snapshot data that you received in your conversation with West Edge, or any, high points that might be useful for the board.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Schaefer, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Really happy to be able to come with a favorable outcome. It's a much better feeling to be able to present favorable results. I'll echo Dr. Schaefer's comments. We really had a lot of community members that supported us and pushed this message out into their social circles and their social networks. And I think that was something that made a significant difference for us this time, is people took the initiative to do that on their own, and sharing it with their networks inevitably shared it with other networks of individuals, and people really got the message and got accurate information about the project. I think that's one of the struggles that we've had in the past, is making sure that people have the facts and that they really understand what the project entails, what the impact is on them as an individual, not necessarily just as a, somebody that lives in Cheyenne and what it means for Cheyenne, but really as an individual in our county. And so the level of support is great. We'll continue to try to get more demographic information. I'm very interested in seeing some of the results that come from the county clerk's office as they compile that information too. But I did get just a quick snapshot from West Edge today, just in regards to some of the traffic that we had through social media and through our Google Ads displays. It is no surprise, and I think that part of the reason we chose this non-traditional route is really to reach a demographic that we couldn't reach through some of those traditional means, or we haven't reached in the past. And so we definitely outperformed our own expectations for some of that. Our most prominent market, both through our Google ads that we ran as well as our social media campaign, was that 25 to 34 demographic, with the second group being 35 to 44. And those specifically were those people that we really were trying to hit. So I echo Dr. Schaefer's comments. I've heard from many people that they saw the ads. I don't know what it is to say that I didn't see many of the ads, but they saw the ads, and the videos interrupted, something that they were doing on YouTube, and that's what we wanted was for people to see the information. Overall, our impressions with our Google ads, we had over 1 million impressions from the display ads for Transform LCCC. And our click-through rate was 0.31, and anything above 0.3 is really a respectable number when you consider click-through rates. So we're really excited to see those numbers hit the average range. Again, a little bit heavier with our female demographic than our male, but I think we anticipated that and we're hoping for that. They are likely to get out and vote and to do that. We had some great community support, was able to reach out to some of our community groups. And if we weren't able to make a presentation to them, they were more than willing to let us provide information through their social network channels. The MOPS groups here in town, all of them were very receptive to that. That's the mothers of preschoolers. And so often a hard demographic to reach and engage with, but they were more than willing to share the message. I think our community really supports the college, and the results showed that. And so it's just a lot of fun to see this project be successful and to see it move forward. Thank you for your support and for putting up with multiple emails and maybe more information than you would have liked to receive at times. But really, your voice in the community is very important. And so your support behind this project, as well as our community members and our volunteers, is really what made it successful. So thank you very much. Any questions? I don't know that I have the answers, but I'll try. Great. Well, thank you.
Thanks, Lisa.
Well, then, Mr. Chairman, just a couple other quick updates. I think I've shared with you most of the details that were important or salient regarding the commission's meeting on October 16th in Rock Springs. That was the meeting in which they considered tuition policy and tuition changes. I think most of that is old news. On the one hand, they had a very, very robust and I think focused conversation on actual policy and policy philosophy and positions, which is a wonderful progression for the commission and their work. They certainly made changes to tuition that will impact our students and our campuses, and we'll adjust for that and work with students. But I was pleased. Well, maybe I didn't, and I don't know that we agreed with all of the decisions of the commission. Where I was really pleased is that they were having good, solid discourse on really differing philosophies on the policies and what we should be doing in regards to tuition, which portion should students bear and what should they share. And so I think it was a productive meeting, and I hope that level of progression continues with the commission, especially under Dr. Caldwell's leadership as the executive director. On October 30th, a handful of us and Dr. Caldwell sat down with Governor Meade to go through the supplemental budget components for the Community College Commission. I think most of you know the process from here. Governor Meade will, of course, propose and develop and propose his supplemental budget, and will actually present that to the JAC in December. Trustee Ketchum, correct me if I go off path here. Governor-elect Gordon will have the opportunity to consider Governor Mead's proposed budget. Will likely make his own budget and additions and present that to the JAC in January to go through. And so, we'll have to work with essentially both offices. We certainly want to ensure that Governor Mead's proposed budget reflects the priorities of the community colleges and the commission, but we'll also have to work with Governor-elect Gordon to make the same case and hopefully have the same type of coverage in it. And so it'll be an interesting transition time, I think, on a lot of levels. Nothing really surprising in the commission's request. One of the pieces where we are watching is just the supplemental budget request to adjust for the number of employees at the community colleges to ensure we have adequate health insurance reimbursement. It's a pretty complex topic. I don't want to drag down the conversation tonight on that, but it is one that we need to be remedied if we want to ensure that we have an adequate appropriation to cover health insurance premiums. And so we're working through that with the governor's office and seem to have a path there for that. The other piece that I just wanted to point out, the colleges, as I think you're aware, have come together, and we've actually made a formal request to Governor Mead to incorporate a cost of living adjustment within his supplemental budget for community college employees. We discussed that to some length. He asked for additional information and rationale of what we were essentially asking for. And we were able to submit a letter to his office today that went through and actually identified the true inflationary pressures our employees are feeling, what the colleges have been able to do really since FY10, so the last 8 years, what the true inflationary pressure has been, what the state's done, and really pointed out the gap that there is still about an 8% gap from what actual inflation has been and what we've actually been able to address through cost of living adjustments. While the state revenue pictures certainly looks more promising, when those dollars go up, there's a lot of folks that are interested in accessing them for different things. And so we really don't know where it'll go from here. One of the things that we have to work on as 7 colleges and with the Trustees Association is really finalizing the legislative priorities for the general session and really thinking through strategically how those priorities are ranked and how they're presented, knowing that it'll be incredibly difficult to have all the priorities satisfied in the session. And so we have to be very cognizant of what's really the most important and what are the ones that we may be willing to live without. And that's a dialogue and a dance that we do every legislative session. But you'll see employee compensation on the priority list and likely at the top would be my guess. And Trustee Salazar and Erickson may have some insights on that as well.
So Mr. Chairman, can I interrupt quick? So Joe, when and with whom do you have that discussion about? Is it a discussion about what all of the community colleges are going to take to the legislature as a whole? Like that's usually what we see every year, right? That sort of that elevator kind of thing of this is what all of the community colleges want. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Trustee Little. So the general process is we work closely, and actually I will say that the executive director of the Wyoming Association of Community College Trustees, Erin, really does a yeoman's job at sort of coordinating with the trustees, with the presidents, with the commission office. She brings us together to talk about those things. And we've really tried to speak more effectively with one voice when it comes to legislative priorities, even in some years where, the priorities may benefit a small number of campuses. For example, capital construction will be a priority that will really focus on Northern Wyoming Community College District and CWC and possibly Western's major maintenance thing. So 3 campuses, but all 7 colleges are going to support that as a priority. And so it's a generative process where lots of groups are discussing this individually and engaged, and then Erin helps us bring those all together and we agree upon those priorities. And that's what we present to the legislature, and that's really what she carries in the interaction with legislators and other folks.
Okay, thanks, Joe.
Mr. Chair, to build on what Dr. Joe just, we started that process last month in Riverton, where the board of WAC met with the presidents and reviewed the legislative priorities and the themes that we're going to be interested in. And then our executive director, Aaron Taylor, has followed up with the presidents to clean that up somewhat and get a consensus with the presidents. So what we're waiting for now, at least at the WAC level, is the response from the presidents of what that list of priorities. And Dr. Joe just reviewed a couple of them. And I think we're getting pretty close, I believe, right, Dr. Joe, to have that legislative topics presented to all the colleges so that we're all in one voice again.
Okay, thanks, Don.
Yeah, thank you, Trustee Erickson and Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I just wanted to stress the pressures. Well, we've done good work, I think, at LCCC and hard work to implement a new compensation model and really have tried to address for the market pressures. And honestly, all the colleges are continually doing this, for individual employees or groups of employees. But while you're taking what resources are available, really in a time of stagnated appropriations and perhaps even, we went through budget cuts, you're taking money elsewhere to deal with the market piece. When you see real inflation and things cost more and you're not addressing that for all employees, it becomes incredibly difficult to do that. And so to put it into perspective, because we look at this, 41% of employee turnover at LCCC last year was a result of compensation issues. And it's where they were offered a higher earnings in Colorado or wherever to do that, and oftentimes losing them out of state. And so we know, well, that's not the majority. It's getting pretty close to the majority. And what that's coming from is both the market pressures we're trying to address, but we've got folks that are becoming competitive and we're not moving the scales with inflationary pressures. And so it's why the cost of living adjustment, I think, is going to be essential, and I don't know that we can go another biennium where we're not addressing these types of pressures, or we're just going to keep losing our best and brightest, and we're going to see our applicant pools getting smaller and smaller if we're not competitive. And that's, the wonderful thing about a strong economy is we have a strong economy. When you have a strong economy with a limited workforce, and we're essentially fully employed right now, good people are going to command a premium, and it's going to be hard to keep up with that. And I think that's why you saw wages finally take a nice boost here in October, not just with job creation, but wages actually finally increasing. Well, we now have to compete with that pressure, and that's been our argument. But realizing that, while there's $400 million perhaps above projections in this, coming to the state coffers, there's a lot of demands for those dollars, and we'll just be one of those demands. But, we feel we have to make the case for our employees. Mr. Chairman, two other things, more housekeeping. The first thing, just as a recap and to get your nods, we will start scheduling the dinners with the different groups this spring. If you remember our previous conversation about wanting to have the opportunity to interact with the group. So that means we'll schedule a dinner, a pre-board meeting dinner with students coming up, one with staff, and we'll have to see based on numbers and what staff senate wants if we do classified staff one night and we do professional staff or integrate them, and with faculty. And so we'll be looking at the spring dates, which are actually on the agenda, right, Vicki, or at least the conversation about suggested dates. We need to talk about spring dates. December's agenda. In December, we'll have spring dates, and then hopefully hopefully I'll identify, or we'll identify some of those dates that would be good for us to hold the dinners. Thank you, Vicki. So those are coming. We'll schedule them. I just want you to be aware that we'll start working on that, and then can have some discussion about how you want to structure those dinners. But generally, it's really informal. And then the last thing is a request. I need a nominee from you for the WACCT annual awards. Each year, you select a nominee for trustee of the year that goes into that award process. We need to start working on those applications or those nomination packages like by Friday. So don't have to do it now, but somehow through your chairman or however you want to do it, I just need to know which trustee we'd like to move forward as the trustee of the year for the WACT award. So that's a little bit of housekeeping. With that, Mr. Chairman, I think that's all I need to cover. Happy to answer any questions.
I'll be in touch with you guys tomorrow. And we'll get that ball rolling. Thanks, Joe. So we're on to approval items. Dr. Schaefer, Associate Vice President Trimble, do you have anything to add to that?
No, Mr. Chairman, my staff recommendation is that you've got two wonderful proposals to name spaces on campus, one for the soon-to-be new library patio and one for the soon-to-be library family study room, the patio being named after Platte Valley Bank for their generosity to the library project, and the family study room to be named after Dale and Paula Strickland for their generosity in helping with that project as well. My recommendation is that you approve the naming of those spaces accordingly.
Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the naming of the facilities that Dr. Joe has just enumerated.
Second the motion.
Moved by Trustee Erickson, seconded by Trustee Soto. Any more discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Now on to board reports. I will turn this over to Trustee Erickson and Trustee Salazar.
Well, Mr. Chair, we're going to, Trustee Salazar and I are going to tag team here back and forth. And so we have decided that I will cover the WAC board meeting, and Trustee Salazar will cover the conference, and we will add back and forth as we go through here. And hopefully there will be some questions that you may have of us. Is it with the board meeting of WAC, and again, WAC is composed of 2 trustees from each of the 7 community colleges, and Trustee Salazar and I are the current representatives at the WAC. Did I not count right?
No, I'm just seeing how many pages you had.
Oh, I don't think so. I think I have 2. However, I could add a few more. Well, I caught that nonverbal communication. I wasn't sure what I was catching. Okay. And we had a typical meeting where we review our finances, and then we have an update of what we've been doing and what we're planning. And we planned this conference on campus security, which was a phenomenal. And Trustee Salazar will speak more to that. We accomplished a couple of other things. We made a change in the bylaws that affects all the colleges in the representatives that we're going to have each 2 years on the WAC board. Currently, every December, we elect 2 of our members, which is Trustee Salazar and I at this point. That is going to change now. Come this December, when we have our elections for not only our officers for this body, but also 2 representatives for the WAC board. And we will then serve for 2 years. And both Salazar and Erickson would be delighted to continue to represent this body if you so choose to do that. So we're making a campaign pitch at this point. And we're not spending any money to do that. Another thing that we changed is, this is not a very good rendering, but this is the logo for WAC. The old one had blue and yellow coloring, and you couldn't quite determine what the phrase was when you got after Wyoming Association of Community College Trustees. It was blurry. So we now have it so it's all the same color, and we still have the picture of the state with the 7 community colleges displayed. So that we accomplished. We will have our February education meeting. That's the one that we have where we have our awards and also our reception with the legislators. And we'll have a half day with the Community College Commission reviewing what the Community College Commission does in the state of Wyoming. And also we'll have the opportunity to learn more about Dr. Caldwell, who is the new executive director, and how she is transitioned into her new job. I think you're all gonna, if you haven't met her yet, I think you're all gonna be delighted. She's a very knowledgeable experience. At one time was at Western Community College, then went to a college system in Northern California, I believe, and is just delighted to be back. She just said Wyoming has never left her. Wyoming's always been part of her. So she's really a firecracker, and she's going to do good work, I think, for the community colleges. And I would say that there's one other thing that we're going to be doing is from an orientation point of view as to what WAC does in the state of Wyoming. We're going to have a orientation video that we're working with the Wyoming, I got to say this right, broadcasting system, public broadcasting system, whatever it is. It's our broadcasting public.
Wyoming PBS. Yes.
PBS.
Yep.
And the reason I'm stumbling on that is because we've been at our board level, been reminded that we've got to have the right name, and I don't have the right name. So if I looked at my materials here, I would have had the right name. Thank you, Dr. Joe. So at our February meeting with all the other trustees from around the state, the Wyoming PBS folks will be videoing what we're doing. They'll be videoing our little education conference. They'll be videoing us talking to legislators. They'll be videoing the reception and the awards evening. So we hope to have about a 7 to maybe not more than 10-minute video that can be then placed on the website for WAC. So anyone that wants to know what's WAC all about, get that link, and there you got it. You have anything you want to add?
Not to that.
Okay.
Or you can talk about the WAC conference when you're ready.
Okay. As far as the WAC board meeting, did you have anything else like that? Okay, then.
Unless you want to talk CTE, not.
There was a presentation by a group called the Wyoming Association for Career and Technical Education. And this is a group of people that are pushing some flexibility with the Hathaway funding. They would like to see opportunities for students to get Hathaway money for career and technical education. We looked at it, we heard about it, and we said, well, let's get some more information. I particularly commented, I think they were looking for an endorsement.
Right.
And I commented, I think that maybe it's a little soon to endorse this particular effort until we see what their bill is. Then we have the opportunity to understand just what they want to do in the modifying and providing flexibility in Hathaway. And I don't know, maybe Brad, you may have some more information on that, but are you familiar with their efforts yet? Yeah. Okay. So that's going to be coming forward. They're going to provide a legislative thrust, and they will have a bill that they will present and probably come back to the WAC for an endorsement. All right. All right. Then I'll pass it on to you for the conference.
So the conference was on providing safe and healthy campuses in Wyoming. And personally, I was shocked by all the things that we might be missing. And I'm not sure how much all this would cost, but it sounded like a big dollar amount just hearing all the things. He had some people from Alamo College that have actual youth department at their college, which we don't have. And they talked about several things. I'll just kind of put the things that I put check marks on and that might raise some questions for us to kind of look at in the future. And one of them was the exposure for our sports teams when they travel. I mean, I don't know if you even think about that kind of thing. What happens when our sports teams travel and how is their safety insured? And then practice scenarios and most likely response plans. One they call an incident command structure, which is something that's required to follow to get federal grants. So there's a funding opportunity there, but it also has to follow these procedures. And then the one thing that stuck with me was this continuity of operation should you have an incident. Because the scenarios that they gave in, there were other presentations, but they gave some scenarios where they couldn't get hold of certain people. And then they also had to still start and keep the school in business the next week. And had they not had continuity of operations in the emergency operations center, then they might not have been able to do it. And I think they still did have some hiccups in that whole process as they were trying to do that. The theme underlying it was you cannot have student success without student safety. And I think it gets down to the issue, which I don't know if we're going to take a position on it, but about campus carry, that was an issue that was brought up, and how expensive that might be and the liability for a college, especially in that kind of an environment. I don't know what these things are, but they're called red flag laws. I don't know, maybe you know what that is, Fourth Amendment on search and seizure. But I put a question mark by it, something to be investigated. They called it a red flag law. That implies the Fourth Amendment on search and seizure. So they were raising that as an issue. What else?
Will not be doing Fourth Amendment searches and seizures.
Do what?
We will not be doing searches and seizures.
Well, I don't know, then I wrote it down. I don't know what it
No,
said.
I'm not familiar with that.
I had a big question mark by it. But it's very informative, and I have a lot of notes on what happened and some recommendations that they made in terms of how to assess your security. So I have a list of, if we maybe at some retreat level, we might be able to talk through some of these things more in depth. And that's about it, unless I'm not going to talk about the legislative panel unless you think that's important.
No, we did meet with the legislators, and the legislators all told us what you would expect them to say. Well, we're going to try to do our best. We don't know where we're going to find the money. We're going to do our best.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. I do have a couple things that I'd like to add. The conference was a comprehensive conference dealing with all aspects of campus security, not just an incident with an active shooter. We had a presentation by the Homeland Security people and Safe to Tell, so that we encourage the people on campus, whether it be students or wherever else, of a possible student that is having an emotional problem that could lead to some type of tragic incident. We had the most sobering video that I have seen it was an FBI video relative to an active shooter activity and the impact that it had on the school, the community, the family, those that were killed, those that were not killed. And I tell you what, every one of us in that room afterwards, we were stunned. And in fact, it took me at least an hour to recoup, because it was so dramatic and so to the point of all the various triggers that can affect various people when you have one incident that occurs. Another thing that we got was how important it is for the Board of Trustees of our colleges to be on top of what our policies are and what we're doing relative to campus security in the here and now and also in the future. And so as a result of that, I talked with James Crosby, our security director here, and he pointed out to me that we have a campus safety group that has had now 2 meetings, and I asked to participate, and so I guess I'm now a member at the blessing of Dr. Joe. This committee is composed of a variety of people from all campus. I don't recall whether we have any student participation at this point, but I suspect that will come down the road. And they've had 2 meetings, and they've been organizational and identifying really what the mission is and what their purpose is. And they made sure that it's not just another committee and it's not some superstructure that's going to tell anybody and everybody what to do. It's an advisory group and how to improve and prepare for the various problems that can come forward relative to all aspects of campus safety. And I think that that is an extremely important group, and I will be reporting back to this group each time we have a meeting. My big takeaway of this conference is that campus security is really a much larger managing of all risks that you have, such as the athletes when they're off traveling, or a bunch of other things such as walking down the spine or kind of mall here, and a cart comes along that's a landscaping cart, or say it's a cleaning the walkway of snow, and we have a student or something that may fall and get run over. I mean, just a number of different types of things that you just don't think about unless you start examining them. So we as a board have a responsibility to review our policy, to support the president and the administration if there ever is a particular incident that we have to respond to and to recover. The recovery is a long task, as we learned from the lady in Umpqua Community College. She experienced an active shooter about 3 years ago, and it is not a nice thing. It's not a nice thing, but we've got to take the time to be prepared for it. And I think our students and our community require that of us.
I think it's safe to say that this conversation deserves more attention, and probably we should put this on the next retreat agenda so that we can give it the proper amount of time that it deserves. So, any other questions for Trustee Erickson, Trustee Salazar? All right, thank you guys.
I have one other thing to say, and there's an opportunity for us to tap into some federal monies. The Homeland Security office here in Wyoming has $600,000 that they can use for various projects, and you don't have to match it. $300,000 though has been already allocated for the Safe to Tell program, but there's another $300,000 that's available for potential projects or equipment, planning, training, even to send somebody to a particular conference to bring back more information to our board or to the staff as a whole. I passed that on to Rick a little earlier, and he said, boy, we got to get on top of that. And the application period is February 1 through March 3rd.
Mr. Chairman, should we invite somebody from Homeland Security to discuss it? Was somebody there that understood how the grant was, or?
Yeah, Guy Cameron,
He was
the director.
Yeah.
He was there, gave a presentation, and encouraged. He really encouraged the colleges to submit an application to, I think an area, I don't know where it is yet, but I think we need to think that through that.
Sure.
We can possibly do it.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I think generally we have a retreat in January, so
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
So. All right, on to the ACCT Leadership Congress. Who wants to start? Anybody want to throw out some highlights?
I can start. Is that okay,
Yes,
guys?
of course.
I'll start. I was, all of you chose me to be our representative on the American Association of Community College Trustees votes. So if it's okay, I thought I would fill you in just really quickly on the kind of things we voted on, and then I want to just throw out a couple of ideas to you too. We had some elections for a regional director. This is the region that we are in. We are in the western region of the Association of Community College Trustees. We had an election for our regional director and a gentleman named Dan Mims from San Jacinto College.
San Jacinto?
Jacinto, thank you. San Jacinto College in Texas was elected for that. And then we had an election on just various directors at large for ACCT, and 3 were elected. Dan Altmeyer from Highline College in Washington, William Kelly from Harper College in Illinois, and Alton Smith from Lone Star College System in Texas. And the way these elections took place is all the different candidates handed out information about themselves and why they thought you should vote for them, and then they would come to our various meetings and introduce themselves and talk about why we should vote for them, and then we got in a big room and voted. So it was a lot of fun. So those were the folks that were elected. A couple of things I wanna bring up. We also had some individual regional meeting, like I went to the Western Caucus. A couple questions came up. One was a discussion on whether ACCT should reinstate regional conferences. Like we would have a Western Regional Conference. The ACCT used to do that and stopped doing that because it was too expensive for them. But they've had a lot of trustees tell them that they would love to see those again, the regional conferences. So they're saying, okay, we're open to that and spending the money, but you have to convince us that the expense would be worth their while. So if you want something like that, please put together a good proposal as to why you think those kind of meetings should happen. But they're open to it, which a lot of people seemed really happy about. Another thing I wanted to mention is most of the states have something called a statewide coordinator. And this is a person who goes to the various ACCT meetings and coordinates, like in our case, it would be a coordinator of the Wyoming trustees. So what I would envision is this person would work a lot together with Aaron and also, maybe the chairs of the boards of the different boards of trustees. Wyoming does not have a state coordinator. There are several states in the Western region that don't have state coordinators. And I thought that was really wrong because I always feel that Wyoming should have a nice, strong voice in anything that happens nationally. I feel really passionate about that.
Trustee Little, can I add some history
please.
on that particular issue?
Mm-hmm.
WAC has had a coordinator, and it was Walter
Wall.
Ramsey.
Yep, that's
And
it.
he was such a micromanager and so detailed, and he did a lot of additional work in that job that he made it difficult for someone to follow him.
Yeah.
And so when he decided to depart from and resign that particular position, no one of the board, the WAC board, was interested in following up. Now, it doesn't mean it has to be a person from the WAC board. It could be a trustee from any one of the colleges. But with your particular interest there, you might look at your own interest in maybe following up.
Yeah, and one of the things I wanted to mention, I talked with Walt. He was there.
Okay.
And I talked with him about this. And it involves a couple of reports a year, 3 conference calls a year, and then 2 meetings a year. That person would also be required to go to all the ACCT meetings at the expense of the college. I think we should have somebody from Wyoming do that. And Walt did too. And I know he's a hard act to follow, but I think we should. I would be open to doing this, but I can't until the fall of next year because I'm also the president of the board of Cheyenne Little Theater, which is just really time consuming. So I can't do both things. But I thought maybe if somebody else on the board was interested in doing it now, or if you wanted to wait and we could address it again in the fall of next year, I would be open to doing something like this. I think ACCT is an organization that I would like to be more involved in and know
Mr.
about.
Chair, if you would like, Brenda, I'd be happy to transfer this interest of yours to Aaron Taylor,
Oh, good.
our executive director.
Mhm.
And maybe we can put this on our February WAC board agenda.
Yeah,
I'd be
yeah.
happy to do that.
That'd be good. That'd be good. But if somebody else wanted to do it before the fall of next year, I'd be way open to that. I think we really need to do it. And another thing I wanted to mention very quickly, since we were talking about retreats a little bit ago, one of the things that I heard in one of my sessions was talking about board and president evaluations. And I think were you at that one too, Wendy?
I think I was.
And some things they talked about really touched me. One of those was the idea of using a retreat for the board and the president's evaluation and doing it more like, what do we want? What kind of place do we want in our community? What kind of place, how do we want to affect our community? What sort of place do we want in our community? Rather than, and you know, it's really good that Carol has us do these kind of evaluations, because when I was first a trustee, we didn't do them at all. So at least now, you know, we're doing them. But I think that's something that we should explore, is maybe have more of a larger discussion about the kind of place that we as a board want to have in our community, how we want Joe to be interacting with our community, and how we as individuals should, and then maybe just spend a day talking about that. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Anyone else?
On that topic, there was a couple sessions I went to that were interesting, and it was basically like public benefits can help us. There's 13% students nationwide that are homeless. If you work with the Department of Health, they have programs like SNAP, certain things that I'm not 100% sure for, utilizing this opportunity to give these federal funds to the college as well. So I saw a few things like that. Also, there was another one I went to pertaining to revenue generators, because the state of Illinois owes $8 billion to creditors. So they're actually broke. So colleges from Illinois have been trying to figure out ways. So they built a water park for $45,000. They made a profit of $55,000, and it was student built. So I mean, there's a lot of, you know. Then they had a campground they built on their campus, and all of these are, you know, certain revenue things. Just, you know, throwing out ideas. I'm not saying we have to have that, but you know, it's a good road to look on, especially if the state decides that they're broke and we don't get any money.
Water park's a step up from our pool plan.
See, there you go.
Ooh, good one, Derek.
Had to bring it up.
Okay, I'll go last.
I was just gonna mention, I think Brendan said, I was probably in one of the same sessions too. I didn't see you, so I was perhaps to the side, but I agree with everything you said on the board retreat and this board self-evaluation. One thing that I heard there, and again, I may have misheard this, but that somehow the board evaluation is related to the accreditation, and that there's a process, and I have read my notes that you start and you end, and you compare what you said you're gonna do with what you actually did, and that goes into your accreditation process. One of the other things I was gonna mention is there's podcasts that the ACCT has put out. It's called In the Know podcast. So any of you can go out to the ACCT site and subscribe to these podcasts, and they're very interesting. Some of the ones I listen to, the ones that are called the In the Know sessions. Not that we have this problem, but they talk. One of my ones, they talk about onboarding of a new president and some of the issues that you might have. They said an interesting statistic was that. Don't get any ideas. Typically, the new presidents only stay for a couple of years. So a lot of colleges, at least nationwide, have issues where they're constantly trying to onboard a new president, and 2 years seems like a very short amount of time for a person to get familiar with anything. So they were talking about processes and how ECCT can help with those processes. I think they're trying to sell something as well. But I think the in the know sessions and those podcasts would be very interesting to listen to. You can decide which ones to listen to, and they're very short. So.
Thanks.
Well, I'm going to admit to you that I was distracted today and did not really have a lot of time to prepare. I did attend the session that Brenda talked about with the evaluations, and I thought that was interesting. I would really like for us to have a better discussion of the sessions that we all attended, maybe at our retreat. So
Sure.
I think we all had, there were a lot of sessions, a lot of information, and it's frankly too much to really put out here in a monthly meeting.
I agree.
Mr. Chair, there's another option, and that would be to have that discussion at one of our dinner meetings. I remember when I returned along with former trustee Mosier, we spent a whole dinner meeting talking about the various sessions that we went to and some of the takeaways that we thought were useful. So that's another option. Have it with the dinner meeting.
That's a good idea too.
All right.
Okay. I just want to comment that one of the benefits of going was not only the conference, but getting some time to spend with the fellow trustees.
Yeah.
We had some time where we had dinner
Yeah.
together, and we just shared and learned things about each other. And I think that was very nice, and I really enjoyed that. In addition to the conference, I spent time with Arcs and always in the car for several hours when we go to Waxman. So I know
I'm not getting in your car again.
Yeah, I know. So and it is good to find out about people beyond just what we see each other in this meeting, and I really enjoyed that.
It was one of the best parts, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of the benefits, excuse me, Mr. Chair, that's one of the benefits of a group from the same organization going to a conference and having the networking that you can develop. And it's, I don't know whether you can put a dollar value on that, but it certainly is something that comes forward.
Well, yeah, I know I won't be here, but I think that conversation will be fun to be around. So, yeah, good idea for next time. Trustee Ketchum, any update for that planning, the implementation committee?
Sure. We've had a couple meetings. It's still in its beginning process. There's 8 initiatives, and I don't want to go through all of them, but we're getting committee leaders on each one of those initiatives. I guess they're called team leaders for each one of those, and then they'll make committees out of each one of those. I don't know, there's a separate name they came up with. Dr. Schaefer and I are on one right now. It's the LCCC Applied Baccalaureate degrees. We're just kind of in the discovery process, just seeing what might come of that. But basically, that's about it right now. Keep attending, and I'll have more information. And I'm really honored to be on this committee because it seems to be something good for LCCC and Cheyenne.
Do you want to talk about the planned rollout, at least the timeline for it? Is
I
that
don't know
still?
if they really want, I don't think they have a definitive
Oh,
date,
okay.
so we'll let them
Sure.
roll that one out when they want to do that.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question? This be to you, Jeff, and also to Dr. Joe. When I reviewed that report, I guess it was the report that was provided by Market as to where you're headed and so forth, and the various areas of interest to pursue. I was stunned by the fact that there was no information about the importance of air service to the city of Cheyenne. And I believe I'm correct, that there wasn't one paragraph about air service. Now, I'm your representative on the craft, the Cheyenne Regional Air Focus Team that has developed the funds for the minimum passenger guarantee that allows us to now have American Airlines coming here. But I'm kind of stunned that this group doesn't have any section group that is addressing the continuance of air service for the city of Cheyenne. And if I'm correct on that, I would certainly encourage you to bring that up.
Well, they do have a portion for infrastructure, so I would imagine that would fall under any portion of your air service continuing or not. I mean, there's quite a few different ones. I mean, it's not specific to that, but I'm sure if you had, we have these strategy coordinators. If you want us to talk to one of them to put somebody on their committee from the air service or something of that nature.
I'm not looking for that particularly as that it is an area of concern that needs to be addressed somehow by this group, because this, as I understand this group, it's not just one that's putting a study together and it's going to then go on the shelf. This is a group that is identifying a step-by-step implementation to achieve the things that we all think needs to be done in this community. Well, air service is a big, big, important part of our overall economic development.
And I agree, but I'm just saying there's certain areas on the committee where they could put people in there that would discuss just that specific thing and say, if it's in part of whatever strategy they want to put it in or initiative, they would bring up, well, this is what we need. We need air service, and that would be their specific niche. And that's what it seems to be doing. They're picking people to put them into these certain strategies to be the specialist on that and give their input on how they want to see that work. So I understand what you're saying, but I think there is room in any of these initiatives to put that in there. Would you agree, Tara, since you have some knowledge of it as well?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. There's probably a disconnect happening between the two phases of information that both of you have. You have a report that I don't know that Trustee Ketchum has actually seen, where you've identified some of the concepts that the consultant evaluated, which did not include air service.
Correct.
Trustee Ketchum is on a different phase of Forward Greater Cheyenne programming, where he's looking at the implementation committee. It doesn't have to do with the Market Street report that you've read. So probably a conversation that maybe the two of you can have to kind of put those two together. And I think the challenges of where the process is and competing information and kind of squaring that up, and certainly a need to roll out the marketing plan much faster in light of the different information that each groups and individuals have within the community. I think much of that information was to be confidential for a while, and I'm not sure the status of that right now.
No, that was open information that I read.
Okay.
Yeah, it was on a website, right? I just picked it right out. I think it may have been through the chamber. I'm not sure where I read it.
Well, clearly there needs to be work for managing information, so I think that's it, but that's the disconnect from what you're communicating and what Trustee Ketchum, I think, is referring to.
Well, where I'm trying to connect is that we get some attention to air service.
Air service will be important.
Yes.
You're a leader there, right?
But we can help you out with that too.
All right. And it's important for us at LCCC as well, because when we're recruiting, we can't get people to come in here. They got to get a car in Denver, drive up here through Stone and whatever else, or go over to Laramie.
I haven't had that yet. Thanks, Jay.
Any other questions? Anything else?
Nope, we're good.
All right. Back to you, Trustee Erickson, for the Facility and Finance Committee.
Okay. We met the FNF and for Janine. FNF is facilities and finance. Okay, and we meet on a monthly basis. And excuse me.
I caught Jess's sneezes.
Oh, yeah, God bless you. All right, we had Wayne Hearn at our meeting, and he presented a draft of the fiscal 18 audit. And he's going to be bringing that audit, I believe, at the December meeting, correct? That'll be on the agenda. And he gave us an alert that there's going to be some changing of the way they deal with certain types of liabilities, which he'll explain. And I'm not even going to try to get into it at this time because it took him a half an hour to try to explain it to us on the committee. But he'll give a shot on that. But it's not a real biggie in terms of our audit having management notes or anything like that. It's just a way of displaying certain liabilities that change the bottom line on our budget. We had the typical update on our building activities, which we had a very good review of that by Rick earlier. Then also Vice President Hay mentioned earlier about the enrollment software with the two vendors, EAB and Civitas. And Chad Marley was at our meeting to review where he is in the attempt to get a consensus with the various colleges throughout the state. And that's a work in progress. He also gave us a forecast of the expense for this particular type of software. And it's a software, if you recall, 2 or 3 meetings back, Chad Marley was here and he reviewed remember the up front and the back. We were talking about the front wheel drive and the back wheel drive, and I think I made this a 4-wheel drive. Well, we're trying to get the 4-wheel drive, but the front side is dealing with the student information, and the back side is with the analytics about what's happening to our students. And there appears to be differing levels of interest in the colleges throughout the state as to which one they want to go with, either the front end, the back end, or both. So that's also a work in progress. However, the cost of this enrollment software is a biggie. The anticipated, if we were to go with EAB as the vendor over a 5-year period, you're looking at $794,000. Wow. For the Civitas, it's $595,000. And I understand that there's another possible vendor that he is going to be talking to, and he may have already
Today.
done that, right?
That was today.
That was today. Okay, so there's another one that's in the mix. And the reason I bring that up is you'll note on your procurement and contract report, which we get on a monthly basis, under table 2, the potential solicitation, we have that $60,000 requirement. If there's anything over $60,000, we need to be involved and approve it. And so we have a listing there now of enrollment software. And that's what I've been just talking about. And that's a big thing. It really is a big thing. You might maybe want to echo and put an amen on that, but as Judy Hayes said, that's a big thing also with the pathways. Did I see Clark? Yeah. So also with Clark, you guys are going to have to make a big decision to bring to us.
Mr. Chairman, so is that one-time cost? And then
No, it's over a 5-year period.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm sorry I misled you on that. It's a total over a 5-year period.
But is it ongoing after that? Like
20,000?
I can't answer that really good.
Mr. Chairman, Trustee Ketchum. So with all of these enterprise level type of software applications, there's an initial cost that's associated with its first implementation, and then there's an annual cost that goes with it. Depending on the structure, those annual costs may escalate and be predetermined pre-negotiation escalations. There may be other pieces that go with it, but there will be an ongoing cost per year, regardless of which solution that we implement. And so what you see, I think, in that full amount is both the initial cost for implementation and setup, and then you have an ongoing cost over that duration.
Mr. Chair, is this, I'm trying to recall previous presentations where we had, there was a kind of cost sharing where somebody else paid the big fee and we bought into it. Is this one of those kinds of things, or is this different than that?
Mr. Chairman, Trustee Salazar, that's been one of the interesting things with this process, because there are some state dollars associated with the appropriation. Long story short, money that was shifted from the Enterprise Technology Services ETS over to the Community College Commission to help us build out the longitudinal data system. And so there is some funding there that could help 7 colleges implement a solution. That money and that approach is very much on is that the rear wheel drive, the analytics piece, to use Chad's thing, the analytics piece of it. And while that's an important component, that funding sits really for the analytics piece and is of an interest more to other campuses, especially those that don't have as robust of an institutional research department that we do. Then the other side, which is really the student side of it, is something I think that we are most interested in implementing, but there is not necessarily state funding. And so part of the dance we're doing here is their power in actually collectively buying a solution and using some of those funds and getting a better deal. The hard part is that one of the potential solutions, EAB Navigate, is something that Western has just stopped using, predominantly for financial reasons, as I understand it, and perhaps some underlying process reasons. So while we would like to capitalize on a statewide type of purchasing power with that, it's proving to take a lot longer than I think we want to take, and probably be a little bit more complex. Judy, am I close with what I'm covering? Yeah. So we will likely have to cover the cost. I could just say amen, because I do think we need to do something here. One of the things we know with the pathways work that we're doing is that we have to get far better at handling our student caseloads and understanding our student pieces, and technology can help with that in ways that we just don't have solutions for. So if you consider a current student advisor that has 350 students roughly on his or her caseload, at any given time, there are students that doing fine and we need to get out of their way. Those are students we may need to do some basic check-in, and then there are students that we know we need to intervene. Technology can help us triage those students in ways with indicators, reports, academic progress on plans, and all of those things. We don't have those tools, and it's why the student piece, and I'm just scratching the surface of what we would actually do from that student management side. We don't have those tools there. So if we want to do an effective student support model from an advising perspective that really fits with the pathways model, we have to be more effective at managing those relationships. So think of it as sort of a CRM, client customer relations management system for how we work with students who are already enrolled with that. And it's incredibly important. And while it's a significant cost, when done well, it has a huge impact on student retention and completion.
Thank you.
And I believe I'm correct, Mr. Chair, that when Mr. Marley presented these options, we as a group kind of gave an impression that move along, keep moving, keep going. Let's get this thing happening. So they're getting closer and closer. I believe they have December 31 as some type of a drop dead date. Am I correct with that date, Rick or Judy? Yeah. So they have to make a decision of some sort by then to bring to us. So we may be getting something in our December meeting.
Possibly, depends on if they exceed the threshold. But we'll try to get it right.
Right. I just have one last thing for the FNF. We reviewed the financial reports, and you will note that your financial reports are through September 30 rather than October 31. And the reason for that is we had our meeting so early in the month that we weren't able to get the data for October. So what we're approving here is the September 30 financial reports. I make that motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Any more discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Trustee Erickson.
Next meeting, please.
The next meeting, you would ask.
December 5th, 11th.
Thank you for that. December 5, 11 o'clock. I didn't get my Google going.
Oh, I got it yesterday or today for the next month.
It's not on Google.
It's on Google, but we got an email.
We got an email.
We got an email.
Yeah, but it'll go to Microsoft, whatever.
Incidentally, Mr. Chair, Trustee Soto, thank you for bringing the Google Calendar. I really like it.
It's nice, isn't it?
It works on a football?
No, it's on my computer.
All right, on to the next order of business. Butch and Brady ran into the summit and turned back around, so they're not with us tonight. And so we are to our ex officio student trustee, Derek Austin.
So I'll be doing one final report before I end up handing the reins over to him for the next meeting. As far as I have to report on the student side of things, student government now has its committees formed. Our meet and greet survey went rather well. We had 66 replies in the 2 hours that we were open. And so those are really good numbers as far as we've seen in previous years. And we have our president looking over that data right now. We're going to establish a summary based on that data, and the summary will be submitted to President Schaefer and Judy A. We had 4 senators that helped moderate the nonpartisan symposium during the election season last month. And that was hosted at the downtown library by the Wyoming Alliance. There are currently 4 food drives running. There's the Staff Center running one, the St. Mark's Episcopal Church running a food drive, Spradley Motors is running a food drive, and Sodexo is running a food drive. All 4 of which will at least partially benefit our pantry. And aside from that, we have a pantry report. I placed it behind the green paper. This is for the first half of the semester. So far, the first half of the semester, we've had the pantry used 182 times. And
That's pretty
it's
astounding.
seeing great use and a lot of volunteers, which is awesome. It's being maintained really well. In fact, we're having trouble keeping the shelves stocked now, which is a fun problem to have compared to the problems we used to. Aside from that, the Senate welcomes trustees to stop by our Tuesday meetings. Our Tuesday meetings are every week from 12:20 to 1:30, or 12:30 to 1:20, sorry. And if any trustee wants to stop by, they should feel free to. We just ask that you message Zeke Sorensen to have yourself added to the agenda to streamline things.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Derek, you can do that probably through my office easiest. So if one of you are interested in doing that, letting, Vicky or me know, we can make sure it gets to Zeke then, so you don't have to worry about running down contact information with Zeke, so.
And then,
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. Derek, is there an agenda that you have for those meetings ahead of time? Or does the agenda kind of develop at the meeting?
we prepared the agenda shortly before, but we typically don't email out the agendas to our members, although I'm sure we can change that structure.
The reason I asked that it might be helpful for us to determine whether that would be a particular meeting that would be of benefit.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to just acknowledge that we were having some discussion about this earlier, a couple of us, and I'd like to present the idea that we may even take turns attending these meetings, so each of us gets an opportunity to visit with the student government, participate in those meetings, or, so maybe we could set up a schedule, so we all know when we could take turns, or, I mean, I know it'll be open, we can go whenever, but I think that's something that we'd like to discuss.
I think
Mr.
that's a good
Chairman, I
idea.
would really like that because then I can put it on my schedule and we can make sure that we all have access to the students and that it's in our schedule.
So, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I think, especially as we start turning over the year, I think that'd be a good time to lay out that schedule and maybe get everybody involved in that piece.
And Mr. Chairman, members of the board, what I was going to suggest is I can work with Derek and Austin and Zeke and maybe identify certain meetings over the course, because right now we do this with me. I go and try to meet with them once a month as well, and we identify specific meetings. I could get a list of the meeting dates over the course of the spring that they would want a trustee to come participate. We could then get that to you, and maybe you guys could pick which date you would want, and then get it back to Zeke and Derek and Constance to have put on there. That might work best, and that way you'll have at least idea of dates, and then you can choose which ones fit, and you guys could kind of pick one, and then we could communicate with the students which ones we'd have a trustee at who would be there. That might be a good way to do this.
Okay, thank you.
Derek's, yeah.
And on a final note, based on the results of the survey, we will be reestablishing our goals for the year. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a question, Mr. Chairman. So Derek, when you say establish our goals for the year, what kind of goals? What do you mean? Give me an idea.
Student government typically establishes 3 goals to accomplish within an academic year. And part of why we chose number 3 is because during some of the conferences we've recently attended, we've really gotten a lot of feedback based on what is reasonable. So going above that would be a bit too much, and going 1 or 2, you can get them done, yes, but it might not be enough. 3 is typically the happiest number. And then as your student government gets better and better, you still only want to take on 3. You may find yourself knocking them out faster. So as far as we're looking at, we're trying to get down to a very patterned schedule.
But when you say a goal, do you mean what? Give me an example.
Oh, sorry.
No, I liked what you said too, but this also an example.
So as far as basic goals go, there's anything from finishing out a project that we plan, like a scholarship, to trying to create a new structure. Like there's one that was brought up, it would be the collaboration between all the clubs and organizations, the student clubs and organizations, where we would somehow pull together all of their leadership with an incentive or a requirement and have them meet once every set amount of times, or once a semester, once a month, to increase communication between groups. That would be another example of the goal. And that one's a bit loftier than some of the others we can take on, but they range in intricacy.
Yeah.
And if I could step in, we've been preemptively sort of, we're trying to tackle student involvement. That's a big goal of ours right now. I've been trying to find ways that we can get interactive with the dormitory and people there, since they seem more likely to be involved with campus events than just people who are kind of coming in and out. So personally, I try to find a way to make any of our goals affect student involvement and have more of a sense of community made. That's something that I want to see achieved.
Okay, those are good examples. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? All right, thanks, guys. On to new business. Trustee Ketchum, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Mainly what I want to talk about is developing a policy. I want to reiterate this 20 times. Nobody will lose their job, or nobody will have to be misplaced from their job that is currently hired. I don't want false things coming out of this, but mainly what I want to talk about is with all of the trustees for the future to develop a policy where, in my vision, and it can be changed however, would be a director or higher must live in Laramie County or Albany County to work at LCCC. The basis of my reasoning is I feel they need input in the community. They should be able to vote on certain things. Trustees is a certain thing, like our fine arts, bond issue, anything like that, they need to have a stake in Laramie County. You know, I think there would be room for possibly like a waiver if we hired somebody from Fort Collins and say, well, they're going to move here within the year or whatever the case is. You know, I mean, there's always going to be some sort of issue or change. But mainly what I'm looking for is to present that and write a policy out. So.
And right now, there's not a current policy to any sort of effect right now. So that's something that we would want to look over and look to, well, first and foremost, discuss and see if that's something we want to proceed looking more into.
Are you looking for a discussion now? Is that the intention?
Yeah, and that's fine. I would look for it too. I mean, there's other portions, like if you are a director now and you want to move up to a vice president, and you live in Colorado or Nebraska, then that would take precedent. Then you need to move to Wyoming if you are hired in that position after this policy would take effect. There's certain elements of it, but as is now, nobody would lose their job or anything of that nature. It wouldn't affect the faculty on what I feel. If you feel it's higher up, whatever the case is, it's just, that's my idea.
Mr. Chair, if we're going to have a discussion, I'm curious as to the motivation. What prompted this particular concern for the policy?
Well, like I said, community involvement. Also, we're looking at the state. We're losing so many of our students, so many of our people that we're educating are going elsewhere. I mean, we have people that could come into these positions out of UW or, you know, that we're losing to other states, other entities. Endow is a perfect example where we're trying to keep people in Wyoming. And we're hiring from out of state and they don't want to live here. They'll live outside of Wyoming. So what, you know, there's just lots of argument for that.
That's it. It's not, this is not something out of this world. I know Laramie 1 implemented this a couple years back too. So I agree with Trustee Ketchum. I think these are valid points. If they're some of these, some employees here don't have the opportunity to vote and their taxes, you know, are going somewhere else in some cases. So there's the Endow initiative. There's a lot of initiatives going on right now to keep people here and keep the money here in the state. They don't live here. Money's going elsewhere.
Mr. Chair, do we have any idea of how many employees might fit into that category right now?
I've understood, sorry, Mr. Chairman, 20% of the entire school, that's including faculty, are not.
It's all employees, excuse me?
Yeah, that would be all employees. I don't know the director of.
So they drive from somewhere to Cheyenne or Laramie.
Out of state or out of
No,
county?
state.
So 20% of our employees here are living out of state.
I guess to make it more specific, the director and above, do we know that number?
We don't have that.
No, Mr. Chairman, Trustee Salazar, we can get those numbers if the board would like to see how the current structure of the employees are in terms of permanent residency or permanent address.
So I guess, and with that, if it's the board's pleasure to direct Dr. Schaefer to start looking into this more, just to get some more information, we can discuss this next time. But if you have further questions too.
Mr. Chairman. Well, I'm happy to help provide information on this piece. This policy will have some tendrils that will likely reach into legal considerations, and I'd actually encourage you to utilize the intellect and intelligence of your counsel and ask her to perhaps do some background research and bring at least some type of legal perspective on what are the things that need to be considered if you go down this road of a policy where they've perhaps been implemented and likely where there's pitfalls that we simply want to avoid. And I'm happy to work with Tara on that, but I think I would utilize the resources and her knowledge to really bring something that you could then base a policy type conversation off of at a future meeting or perhaps at your retreat even.
Makes sense.
Mr. Chair, not speaking for or against, seriously, not speaking for or against, I just think we need to have more information as to why this would be beneficial for our college and get the data as to how many people would be affected. You're kind of.
Here's the thing, they wouldn't be affected. Nobody would be affected at this point. Nobody would be affected.
Okay, no one would be affected, that there'd be a legacy situation.
Correct.
Okay, so it'd be new people.
That's, I want to reiterate that. Nobody's affected by any of these changes except for the future.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I have spoken with Trustee Ketchum about this idea. Generally, the concept is lawful, so there's that preliminary understanding. What I had suggested Trustee Ketchum do is to get some direction from the board for how to proceed, because there's a couple of ways to do this. The board can make a motion and direct me to draft a policy. A couple of you can form kind of an ad hoc committee to discuss the parameters, and you can work in consultation with me about what that looks like, with an understanding of what some of these concepts are and ideas are that I think the board needs to flesh out more thoroughly for what you're seeking and what you want. Or in the alternative, we can do maybe a work study or a dinner, pre-dinner time, or something during the board meeting in consultation with Executive Director Tammy Davies of HR, on kind of best practices for this policy, because this type of concept is not unique for Wyoming or anywhere else. There are locations that have tried it with success and those that have tried it without success. And so a greater understanding of that, its potential application to the college based on some general parameters from the board, rather than driven by me or Dr. Schaefer, but rather this board, about what you're hoping to see and why, and really working out that rationale and who that applies to. So we can do it a couple different ways. You can just direct me to do it to give us a starting place, and I can work with Dr. Schaefer on that too, to work from, or you can create an ad hoc committee here to create a working group for concepts and policies you want to consider, or we can move it later down the road and have an additional kind of informational session at a meeting with more robust information for both myself and Director Mays. So I'll let you make a decision, and I would move one of those pieces that would then be seconded and voted on by you for direction for this board to take on this topic.
My input is I like number 3, what you're saying.
An information
More
session.
information.
Mr. Chairman, I agree that that is a good place to start, and frankly, the next step might be an ad hoc committee once we have more information.
Yeah, so that would come out of that
Possibly.
idea 3, possibly. I move that we, I make a motion that we schedule an informational meeting
Time during the board meeting, or
like a the pre-board. What would you say, pre-board? I like the pre-board
Pre-board.
dinner idea, to gather data and have Director Mays speak to us about where this has worked and where it hasn't worked and what the implications would be, and the data that's a long motion, Vicki, I'm sorry.
I'm getting it.
And the data that would be important for us to move ahead.
you're an alternative for you to consider too, just doesn't, is if you want it in written format and you don't want to have a meeting devoted to it or time devoted to it, we can provide it in written format as well. So whatever you
I'm an audio learner, so I personally like hearing things and talking about them over reading them, but
I'll second Brenda's motion.
Moved and seconded. Is there any more discussion? Any other thoughts?
Chairman Barker, could we have something written as well? I'm a visual learner, so I would like something written, and then we can discuss it. Would that work?
There will be written materials provided to you, no doubt. There'll be some pictures. Memos from me, of course, the full font.
You'll get graphs from me, sorry. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I think that's a fine piece. One of the things, though, that I want to, I guess, caution or I would ask is, I would rather not be in the position of having to speculate what you're specifically interested in, and without some guidance, while we can certainly do the background of where people generally have a residency or domicile policy for employees, could do that. It would be incredibly helpful if we had some type of guidance from you that would suggest these are the specific things that I'm most interested in. I want it to be executives. It should be everybody. It should be Wyoming, not Laramie County. So help us put some parameters. And I would suggest the best way to do that would just be to have you individually contact Tara and just say, here's what I really am thinking about or want to look at. Because otherwise we're going to be left to our own devices to try to figure out what's really of interest. And I don't want to end up setting up a meeting, have a robust conversation, and Trustee Ketchum says, yeah, but I don't really care about that. I wanted to know about this. So any direct input you could provide us to sort of say, this is when I think about this topic, this is the orientation I have or the things I have, that will just help us, I think, frame that conversation.
Some topics just to think about, Mr. Chairman, if I may, is who the policy would apply to, any geographic limitations. So as Trustee Ketchum indicated, a requirement for Laramie and Albany County, do you agree with that or not? And what the waiver exception looks like, if any. And so those particular concepts are very important.
And what date, timeframe?
Can I call for the question so we can, because don't we have a motion?
There's a
We have a
motion.
motion and a second.
Is you guys anything else? All right.
Make sure you call for the question, so call for it.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. I would suggest not limiting this to a dinner session. I do believe this is going to take be a longer conversation. And with only one meeting, potentially one meeting between now and the retreat, that might be a good time to bring that up again. So. Yeah,
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I would actually probably suggest we look at spending some time at your January retreat. Your next meeting is December 5th. You will be installing Trustee-elect Thompson, and it's before the holidays, and we've got some other things on there. I don't know that that's probably the best time to have this conversation. And so really looking at, unless you want to schedule a retreat in latter December, really looking at a January retreat where we could spend some time on this. I think that gives us adequate time to probably pull something together, and we can work on dates for that. And that's probably the best fit.
Our retreat agenda is getting quite full.
Well, some of these things I think we can move to dinner topics effectively. But you're correct. This one, I think if your retreat tackled the campus safety discussion in this one, that's more than adequate for a very robust and lengthy conversation would be my guess.
Chair Barker, my question about the time frame is, how soon should we respond to the questions that Tara would like us to answer? Should we
No.
put a time frame on that?
2 weeks.
2 weeks, okay. Thank you.
I'll accept submissions later.
You will really receive a reduction in total points, and so your grade may slip, but
And our retreat date is January 6th.
we do not have it yet. Yeah.
All right. Any other new business for this evening? Okay. Our next meeting is the Academic Affairs. The ad hoc meeting is coming up on the 28th at noon. That'll be in here. And then December 5th. So you have a little bit of a meeting left to put up with me on December 5th. So
Mr. Chair, I saw somewhere in listing that this meeting on December 5 is listed as from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. Did I read that right someplace? Because I can see that this is going to be a rather full meeting.
I don't know where that would be.
It's just in my head.
Yeah. I think
Okay, so it has, we're not anticipating to be here, so.
Mr. Chairman, Trustee Erickson, I think it was like from 7 to 7:15.
Yeah.
that was my agenda.
We're out here at 7:50.
Yes. All right. Any other public comment for this evening?
I would like to ask about the Academic Affairs and Student Services meeting. What exactly is that for?
Leave that to Trustee Little.
Oh, boy. Cut me off guard, Derek.
I'll bail you out, Trustee Little. Mr. Chairman, Trustee Goldfuss, that meeting is, it's a standing committee of the board. This specific meeting will be dedicated to a conversation over a draft strategic plan for academic programming or an academic program priority plan. Vice President Harris and Dean Mary Ellen Tast have been working on setting a structure for the types of programming we may want to be looking at over the next 5 years, especially in consideration of Forward Greater Cheyenne, NDOW, and those types of things. So that will really be the topic of this meeting. We'll be presenting the draft concepts, having conversation with them about that. The meeting is noticed, I believe, correct, Vicki? Which means all trustees are certainly welcome, and ex officio student trustees welcome as well.
Yeah, I think it'd be great to have the student trustee.
Yeah, I could have kind of an idea, though I haven't done much, so just wanna make sure everybody has something.
And dessert if Derek's coming.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Cheesecake for Tara.
The ad hoc committee, for the one we're talking about on the 28th?
Yes.
Yes, because there's some legal ramifications in this particular strategy.
If you're there, she'll be there.
Well, then my.
All right, before I ask for a motion to adjourn, remember please to get your WACT nomination to Vicki by the end of the week. You can either go through me or send it directly to Vicki. But by Friday, please.
By noon, please, on Friday.
Otherwise, the threat is I decide.
Yes.
Yes, I just wanted to let people know to drive very carefully. The roads have gotten pretty slick, especially the highway. So be careful when you go home and actually even walking to your car.
All right.
So
I
it was a little bit slick out there, although I have slip shoes on.
Semi, probably.
There's a crash.
You want a motion for adjourn?
Yes.
I make so move that we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.
I hope that
Did you see?